Hello there, ladies and gents, how the devil are you? You join me, AndyManCam, today in Hafkalg on the German Ostsee coast on a beautiful, overcast, raining, freezing cold, windy day. And as I embark upon the frosty journey back home, I'm going to talk to you about 11 things that I don't like about the Honda CB1000R. Goodbye, Fair Beach. See you again when the weather's a bit better. Well, I've had the Honda CB1000R for, how long have I had it? About 3 months now. And in that time, I've covered a total of 6,910 kilometers, so just shy of 7,000. And obviously, there is a lot about this bike to love. In fact, I've already made a video about the 11 things I love about the Honda CB1000R. Check the links in the top right to see that if you want a more positive picture of this machine. But in this particular video, I'm going to tell you about the things that I've discovered, things that I've learned, things that I've just finally made an opinion about that I don't really like. Now, the first on this hall of hates, and the first thing that I was actually disappointed with when I first got the bike, was the vibration. I mean, right now, the low end of the rev range, I'm not getting any vibrations at all, but when you stretch the legs a bit, between 4,000 and 6,000 RPM, the bike seems to have a real buzz to it. I'm going to come clean and say that this is a hatred that I had for the bike when it was in its stock condition. Since then I fitted a booster plug, which actually seems to be doing a great job of smoothing a lot of those vibrations out. And to be honest, I notice the vibrations the most when I'm on the motorway, because then you've just got sustained constant power, and around about the 120 kilometers an hour, so about 70 miles an hour point, there's a really strong buzz through the pegs, through the bars, and through the seat. But to be entirely fair, when on the gas, when stonking through the bendies, you don't really notice it so much. But yeah, that was something that really surprised me. And then to the point where, when I first got the bike, I stuck a MIV Mark III end can on it, brought out a tiny bit of extra noise, saved about 2.5 kilos of weight. But unfortunately, I think what it was doing was allowing the bike to breathe a little better, therefore causing the fueling to be slightly leaner. And this exacerbated and accentuated those vibrations and made it quite uncomfortable to me and my sensitive bot. But yeah, the engine in this bike, in stock condition, is a little bit buzzy. And I've also found that depending on which riding mode you're in, the buzziness from when you let off the throttle from higher revs is more or less depending on where the engine braking setting is, which makes perfect sense. If there's less fuel getting chucked into the engine on overrun, there's going to be more engine braking and there's going to be a harsher buzz because the fueling is lean. Whereas when you have it set to less engine braking, which I'm assuming is being controlled by jamming more fuel into the pipes, you get less of a lean condition, the vibrations seem slightly lessened. But ultimately, that's my pet peeve number one. At certain points, the engine is quite buzzy. So next up on this list of dislikes is, contrary to what I said in the positive video, the sound. Now, just as I said in the positive video, I like the sound of this bike, but the thing that I miss is that when you give it the pasty and then let off, there's nothing. There's no pops, there's no crackles, there's no snaps, there's no burble. It's too suppressed, it's too silenced. I mean, I like the grumbly growl as you give it the beans, but I do miss that raw, characterful pop, crack, cacophony of explosions and joy that comes out the back when you're on the overrun. Shame that, but then that's Euro 4 for you. There's too many cats, there's too many silencers. The pops and bangs can't get out. I'm sure they're still in there, but we just can't hear them. So then the next thing what I'm not a fan of is the front mudguard. This bike is such a glorious chorus of build quality and craftsmanship. It's so beautifully put together and everything's so well finished. And then suddenly, at the very end, you get that. It's a horribly finished, flappy, flexible, cheap, nasty piece of plastic disgustingness. I hate it. I mean, I was on the motorway recently and I was doing 140 kilometers an hour, so that's about 85 miles per hour. And I wanted to stretch my legs a bit, so I stood up and looked down and was horrified to see that the mudguard was flapping around like a prick in a shirt sleeve. It was ridiculous. I'd hate to think what that's doing for stability, aerodynamics, fuel economy, all the things which are kind of important to a motorbike. If a piece of it is shaking itself around like a shitting dog. And even style and shape wise, it just does not go with the bike in any way. There's nothing neo, there's nothing sport, there's definitely nothing cafe about that front mudguard. It definitely seems to me like they got to the end of the bike, ran out of budget and just went, oh no, right, get the placement student to make us a mudguard, will you? And even if you get the plus model of this bike, which then has the silver trims on the mudguard on the sides, it's still the same mudguard, it's just got trims stuck onto the outside of it. You can actually buy those trims separately and retrospectively and stick them onto the ordinary stock mudguard. So there's nothing special about the plus model's mudguard. It's equally as crap, it's just got some aluminium bolted on. So yeah, the mudguard is very bad. It's a huge part of the bike and it's been horribly cheaply finished. So dear Honda, that mudguard does not belong on this otherwise stunning machine. Okay, so next up on my group of gripes, yeah, looking at it, the apparently soft paint. The tank on this bike is absolutely stunning. I think the paint job is beautiful, it's deep, it's rich, it's lustrous, and when the sun shines on it, it takes on a whole new level of sheen. Obviously this is the worst day possible to try and demonstrate that. But my gripe is the fact that it seems the paint is just really soft. And already, after 3 months, I've got a couple of marks on it, and I've been impossibly careful. But I suppose, except for the time when I was messing around changing the handlebars, and I didn't bother to cover the tank over, and I paid the price, because I dropped a washer, not a kilogram weight, not an entire spanner, I dropped a washer onto the tank, and it's actually chipped the lacquer. And then, even worse than that, somehow, can't see it at all because it's wet, but I've actually scuffed the paintwork in this scallop here with my knee while wearing leather trousers. In the dry, soft, dry leather trousers, and I've managed to scratch the side of the tank. So I'm going to need to put some protection on that because that's clearly only going to get worse. It seems they've created an absolutely stunning paint job, but they protected it with a light sugar glaze. So next on my pile of protest is possibly a bit of a personal protest, and that is at the cost of the accessories for this bike. And I've got an extra bit of venom about that because my heated grips, the Daytona ones that I fitted, are either incredibly bad right now or they're just not working at all because I've got relatively cold hands, saved only by these Oxford Mondial gloves, which are doing a fantastic job of keeping my hands dry right now. But yeah, the cost of accessories when you buy the bike. The quick shifter will set you back €700. The heated grips will set you back €300 to €400. Even the little Honda screen that goes on the front is €250. Obviously there are other accessories as well, but that's just to give you an idea. And obviously all of these things, you then have to pay labour on top to have them fitted. Even if you specify these parts, when you buy the bike, you still get charged the labour to fit them. What an absolute joke! Yeah, I say that this is a personal one because I've never bought a new bike before. I'm not really sure what the deal is with the price of accessories and if that's reasonable, but €400 plus fitting for a set of heated grips seems proper friggin' lumpy to me. And I think the accessory that I wanted to get the most was the seat cowl to go on the back, just to give the bike a tidier, more one-seater aggressive kind of look. And that's nearly €300 for a piece of plastic that goes over the seat. Unbelievable. Yeah, I just can't get on board with the cheek of it. That's a hell of a lot of money for bits and bobs. So the bike will be staying official Honda accessory free for the near future. So next up on my collection of criticisms, we come to the chain tensioning of this bike. Now in my positive points video, I talked about how the single-sided swing arm makes all of the chain tensioning and tyre changing, wheel removal and stuff so much easier. The problem with all of that, of course, is that with the swing arm mounted low-level number plate holder and mudguard affair, adjusting the chain turns into a proper ordeal. I mean, in theory, adjusting the chain on this bike is super easy. You've got 2 pinch bolts at the back, then you rotate the cam within which the axle is mounted. This adjusts the rear axle backwards and forwards and tensions your chain. You do the 2 pinch bolts up, job is finished. The problem is, accessing those bolts because of that rear mudguard thing is a pain in the arse unless you create some ridiculous construction. Like I did it yesterday before this ride with a long extender, and then a universal joint, and then another little extender jobby on the end of that. So I had this crazy, spindly, stick insect kind of a tool construction, and I was just so faffy. So whereas in the positive video I said about how I love the look of the bike with that low mounted number plate, in terms of actually adjusting the chain and maintaining the bike, that mudguard thing is a proper pain in the bollards. So what is next on my gathering of grievances? To be honest, it's something that hasn't shown itself very much today because the roads have been relatively smooth. The riding has been relatively gentle thanks to this horrendous weather. But quite a big failing of this bike, in my opinion, is the rear shock absorber. I mean, it does work, it does absorb the shocks, but it's just not very refined. It's got no compression damping, only rebound damping, and as soon as the road gets slightly uneven, as soon as you want to press on and things get a bit active, it's very, very quickly overwhelmed, and everything becomes very thrashy and very harsh. It doesn't give you the smooth and refined ride that I would hope for from a Honda. So I've been told many times by other people, and I firmly believe it, that a really solid upgrade for this bike is an aftermarket rear shock absorber. I mean, obviously it's not a cheap upgrade, but I'm told that fitting a decent shock absorber to this bike absolutely brings the thing alive, and considering I already think the handling of this machine is pretty fantastic, I can only really imagine how it would be better, and hopefully I'll get the chance to try that out. But yeah, the rear shock absorber, it's a specking mistake as far as I'm concerned. I think Honda really ought to have delved slightly deeper into the parts bin and spec something with a far more refined ride and a larger feature set to fit the quality and the workmanship of this high-level bike, and to also suit its slightly sporty aspirations. I mean, it's got fully adjustable Fireblade style forks up the front. Why on earth has it got a budget shock on the back? And then next up on my crowd of criticisms, kind of loosely related to the accessories one, is the fact that this bike has no cruise control. Seems like a really, really lazy omission not to have cruise control on this bike. Honda have already got other bikes with cruise control, so they've got the programming and the software there. Also means they've got control clusters with the cruise control buttons on them. And with this bike having ride-by-wire throttling, it literally is a case of smashing in the programming, putting on the buttons, bosh, you've got cruise control. Yeah, for the sake of saving a few quid, not having to put a different control cluster on, Honda have opted to leave cruise control off of this perfectly cruise control capable bike. Thankfully, I don't miss it all that much. Mostly with my enjoyable and my leisure riding, it's all in the twisties anyway, and cruise control doesn't really have any place there. But seeing as I live in northern Germany, I do sadly spend a lot of time on the motorway to get anywhere worth riding. So that's always 2 to 3 hours before I get to the first bends, and cruise control would be a real godsend in those situations. Yeah, so that's more irksome than truly annoying, but still, I don't really understand why this bike doesn't have that simple upgrade, or at least even as an option. There isn't even an option from Honda to fit cruise control after you've bought the bike. I mean, even long, boring, straight B roads like this, it would be great if I could just relax my right wrist a little bit. It works hard enough as it is. So then, next up on my rabble of rejections, it's another silly little one, but it is there. And this is the position of the horn button. And while we're in the same area, the new position of the pass button. But first of all, the horn button is where I would more readily expect for the indicator switch to be. So the amount of times I've gone to indicate and, yep, sure enough, everybody in the whole area is now looking at me because I can't find the right button. But obviously, this is something that after 3 months' time, I've pretty much gotten used to. Still happens every once in a while, but that was a gripe that was more bothersome at the beginning, but to be honest, not so much now. But still, if you were looking at this bike and you're not used to Hondas, that's something that could potentially get on your nerves for a little while. But the other thing is the pass light. Normally, this little trigger thingy at the top here would be the button to flash the full beams. But on this bike, you actually have to push the full beam button at the bottom to flash the headlights, or push it up to go to full beam. But there's been so many times, and I, to be honest, don't flash people enough to really have gotten fully used to it, but there have been lots of times when I want to flash someone for whatever reason, and I've just turned off the traction control, which obviously is very useful in that moment. So yeah, the button positioning is a little weird, takes a bit of getting used to. I think for most people it's not going to be too much of a problem. I'm pretty much finished with the relearning of where the buttons actually are. Some people might find it an insurmountable obstacle, most of you not, but The button positioning is odd, and that's something that I'm not overly happy with, but I'm sure I will eventually get fully used to it. And then the penultimate item on my troop of troubles is to do with something I'm probably going to have to do when I get home, and that is the filler cap. Inside this filler cap there is an annoying little bar going right across the hole, so when you're fueling up you can't properly put your nozzle in the hole, it just kind of sticks on the edge. Now I personally believe that this little bar has been made so that the fuel goes into the filler cap and then spreads either way and doesn't splash out, which is exactly what it does do if you hold the nozzle above the hole. As soon as you put the nozzle in as far as it'll go, the fuel just all splashes back in your face and makes a horrendous, horrible mess. So it just makes fueling the bike a little bit more of a time-consuming, arduous task than it needs to be, because you have to hold the nozzle away from the hole, carefully watch what you're doing, otherwise you spray petrol everywhere, and you can't smash it in there too fast, because yeah, again, it all just splashes back in your face. Just like all the others, a small and relatively insignificant gripe, but every time it comes to fueling, just causes a little bit of a why I oughta moment. So then the last in my lineup of letdowns is one that I'd actually hoped I wouldn't have been able to actively demonstrate for you today, but I've been out so long that the sun is nearly, well, sun, for there is no sun, we haven't seen him today, but still, it's going to be dark soon, and my last moan about this bike is the headlight. Although in the positive video I talked about it in a positive light, no pun intended, I was happy that Honda have used modern technology with the LEDs, which look good, they're energy efficient, and they're up to date. But sadly, as you can potentially see, they're even on, the headlight just isn't very good. It's not quite completely dark yet, but I can't even see the light that it's throwing out on the road. So it's all well and good being energy efficient, up to date and modern, but it doesn't really help me very much if it doesn't allow me to see where I'm going when it gets dark. Oh look, there it is, and there it's gone. It's just such a tiny little narrow beam of light, and it's also just so dim. No, that is as dim as a dim thing. It's hard to even see if they're even on, so yeah, I don't know what Honda are playing out there. I mean, the LED headlights that have started popping up on the Yamahas have been pretty impressive with their brightness and their spread of light, whereas with this, I think the headlight on my Gilera Runner 50 scooter that I had in the late 90s was slightly brighter than this headlight is. Very, very disappointing indeed. But anyway, with that out of the way, and as the weather has suddenly taken a far more disgusting turn, you probably can't even see me because of the mix of water and darkness, but I've been AndyManCam. This has been my little lineup of 11 things that I don't love about the CB1000R. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope this video has been interesting to you and even a little bit entertaining. If it has, please do give me a big fat thumbs up. If it hasn't, first of all, why have you stayed to the very end? Second of all, while you're here, why don't you give me a fat thumbs down? If you come along to this video purely to hear about the CB1000R, why not come along to the channel, check out all the other videos, more of me riding this bike, more of me riding other bikes, lots of touring, lots of wrenching, lots of product reviews, overall lots of messing around, always on motorbikes. Otherwise, thank you so very much for watching, keep yours shiny, and I will see you next time. Ta-ra! Even on full beam it's a bit